The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame, with exciting Vol sports prints now available.
This is The Sports Source, presented by Bill Hotz and Associates, and by Renewal by Anderson, with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into The Sports Source, presented by Renewal by Anderson today. In 15 years of doing The Sports Source, we've covered the departures and exits of athletic directors Doug Dickey, Mike Hamilton, and Dave Hart, basketball coaches Buzz Peterson, Bruce Pearl, Conzo Martin, Donnie Tyndall, football coaches Philip Fulmer, Lane Kiffin, Derek Dooley, probably another one coming up. My father was a minister, and I think in 15 years of doing this show, I've equaled him in terms of presiding over funerals. It's getting tiresome doing this every 2-3 years, but it looks like we're kind of heading back that way. Obviously, we'll talk some about Tennessee, South Carolina yesterday, but there's a lot of big picture stuff that's going on. That'll be in today's show as well. Let's dive right into the thing. First segment brought to you by Renewal by Anderson. Their Fibrex windows are 2 times stronger than vinyl windows. 2 times stronger. 9 beautiful colors are available. And oh yeah, buy one now, get another one at 40% off. That's no money down, no interest, no payments for 12 months. Whole thing ends on October 31st. Do me a favor, get to their showroom in Bearden. Just go down there to the showroom in Bearden, check it out. You will be blown away. Incredible deal right now on their Fibrex windows. Buy one now, get another one at 40% off. Renewal by Anderson, they are the best name in the business. All right, want to welcome in our panelists for the first segment here today. We got Bob Hodge. VFL Will Overstreet is back on the continent. Good to have you with us. Mr. Jimmy Himes is right there, and Mr. Ryan Callahan down on the other end. As always, we start with 2 headlines from yesterday's loss, and here's the first one. Final straw. We have talked about it on this show. We said we thought it was doubtful that he would survive the season. Most of us, I think, agreed that if he lost to South Carolina, Kentucky, or Vanderbilt, it was going to be very, 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 very difficult for him to return. I was a little surprised by the crowd yesterday. I thought you'd have a much emptier building. They give credit to the crowd. They were loud. They showed up. I don't know how many of them got free tickets or walked in for $5, but still, that was a great showing by Tennessee fans yesterday. But I anticipated a smaller crowd. Still, though, that loss. Are we thinking that's the final straw at this point? I mean, that was what we were thinking going into this game, I believe, that, well, you can't lose to one of those. Now he's lost. Where are we on Butch Jones?
I think it probably was the final straw because you're losing people now who have supported you beyond what a lot of people did. There were people coming in the season didn't like him. People didn't like him after the Florida game. People really didn't like him after the Georgia game. I think now you've lost people who were still with you. And it's not an angry, nasty thing. It's just almost sort of resignation.
Some of it is.
Well, there's a lot of it is.
I think you get resignation with the people who are leaving now.
Yes, I think that's what you got is just, well, we're going to have to make a change because this is no longer tolerable.
I think the big thing that comes to me is the final straw is you've got a non-traditional rival that you usually beat all the time kind of now owns you. In South Carolina, in a lot of ways with their head coach now, they've got your number. I think you saw people yesterday with hire or keep Butch Jones from South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of thing tells you now where you're at. I think you have a lot of people, like you said, that were longtime defenders that now say, okay, really, where are we in this conference? And this is not a good conference this year, and we're still at the bottom of it.
And the bottom of a bad division in a conference that's not as strong.
Yeah.
Jimmy, is he still got some miracle out there that could probably save him, or are you thinking this is it?
Time for the magic show. I think it's going to be very difficult. Look, I felt like going in that if he was 7-5, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. If he was 6-6, I didn't think he would be able to hang on. I haven't seen evidence that this team is going to be able to win 4 of their last 5, and that might be what it takes. Are they capable of beating each of those 5? Yes, they are. But are they good enough to string it together? I'm not sure. Maybe Tennessee fans should have had T-shirts that said "Fire Will Muschamp." Yeah, maybe that helped a little bit. But I think it's going to be difficult, and I think this offense,
we'll get to that in a second. Hold on to that one.
Just make me wonder about your ability to win.
Yes, hold on to that. We're going to get right to that. Ryan Callahan, is this the final straw? Do you think?
I don't know if it's the final straw, but I think you look at this and it's hard to see this setting up well for him, considering he goes to Alabama next weekend. Everyone knows Alabama's going to be a heavy favorite in that game. A big loss in that one might end up being the final straw. So I think it sets the stage for this to have been the knockout punch. Losing to South Carolina, a game you couldn't afford to lose. And as we've seen before, Tennessee coaches losing to South Carolina often is the final straw. Philip Fulmer lost to South Carolina, and that was kind of the last one for him. So can't afford to lose a game like that, and he just did.
Well,
I look at yesterday's game much like I looked at last season. Last season was your year to build up goodwill, to get some people on and be able to take a step back. But you said, okay, we won a division. Yesterday was the game where you could get some people to say, okay, we're still on course to go 8-4 again. Maybe not what we wanted, but we can do it. And I think now that with that loss, I think it's where people say, okay, now if we're going to take that big of a step back.
Yeah. Well, to his point on that, and the different shows that I do, we're having more and more calls that say, I've been behind Butch Jones, but I can't support this anymore. More and more people are calling saying that. Not that wanted to bash him all along, but hey, I was behind him, can't support it anymore.
Yeah, and look, I think that I don't think he's coming back. I said that 2 weeks ago. I don't think he'll be back. I think it'll probably happen in mid-season, which it did with Fulmer, which it did with Dooley, although late with Dooley, but it did happen. Mid-season with Majors, if you want to go back that far. But here's the thing. If you lose to Alabama and then run the table, win your last 5, okay, I suppose you could say that would probably be a spinner, but I would, at that point, that would be pretty unexpected if they won their last 5. I just don't see it out of this team. All right, let's take a look at the next headline. Truly offensive, which it certainly was. That offense has not, as everyone knows by now, you haven't scored a touchdown in 10 quarters. You know, and let's take a look. I asked a few weeks ago if we could compare this to the Clawfence. I think the verdict is in. You got Fulmer with Clawson, you had Dooley with Sinceri, and I think Scott is going to be the end of Butch Jones. There's a comparison between the 2008 and 2017 volunteer offenses. And remember, Tennessee's numbers look a little better here in 2017 because it's a smaller sample, and you've still got Indiana State worked into it. There are no more Indiana States on the roster, on the schedule. So those numbers on the right, unless something changes, and I see no sign of that, it's going to get worse. Gentlemen, what you saw yesterday was with this offense, it doesn't matter who your quarterback is. We talked about that Friday on your radio show. We talked about it Saturday on the Fox TV show. Changing quarterbacks, you just can't do anything well, so I don't see how a quarterback change is going to make the difference. Your thoughts on what you saw yesterday out of the offense, out of Garantano, whatever?
Best thing I saw was running the 1 minute and 13-second offense
against a prevent defense.
And he said, Garantano said he feels comfortable doing that. He seemed to look a little more comfortable. Now, I know there wasn't much of a rush, but he made some nice throws, and the guy had, I guess, 4 completions that looked pretty good. But other than that, Tennessee's offense, they started out pretty good on first down plays, and then they went through a stretch where they had 14 plays on first down. They gained 24 yards. They were awful. I think they had -7 yards on offense in the second half until that last drive. Boy, they're a mess on offense.
You just don't see a lot of things as a defensive guy watching that game that are hard to cover, that are hard to stop. I don't see a lot of things that would get me nervous and get me out of the base defense and going up against you. I don't see any ability to dictate to the defense what they have to be in. All I see is we're basically out there in a base thing. I can have a base defense pretty much out there, and I've got you covered. My guys line up and play ball. We're good to go. There's nothing that makes me have to get into something that I'm uncomfortable. That offense is purely looks like what I would take out against spring game against the defense. I'm trying to see how good they're at.
And anyone hoping that, okay, now you've got a guy who's going to keep it on that zone read. He didn't keep it all that often. Now, there were a couple of plays where he made something happen where it broke down. He got 4 or 5 yards for a first down. No Josh Dobbs by any means. But he got some yards that Dormady hadn't. But it was not, okay, now we got the running quarterback in there. Nah, didn't matter. 20 seconds.
I really think that the biggest problem this offense has, I thought you could go offensive line, you could go quarterback. I think it's your receivers can't get away from anybody. You can usually sit in the stadium and say, my gosh, if he had just seen this guy who was by himself. You did not see that yesterday.
20 seconds, Ryan.
Completely agree. I think the receivers are the biggest problem this offense has right now. And when you look at what this run game is doing, I thought Garantano getting in there might open up some things for the run game. That's the one thing he might help. We saw it in the first half, but even in the second half, the offensive line couldn't open anything up. So the run game's still struggling too.
Dormady was the best runner of the quarterbacks.
That's right. One run.
Good point. Change up.
All right. We've got more on the offense next in terms of play calling. And also in terms of Butch Jones and close games. Close game here, play there. Talking about a different deal. but you are what you are. Come on back.